Well, welcome everyone. We are excited to have you here with us today for our panel on the role of school and academia in reskilling and upskilling the workforce. We have people logging on already from all over the world: Switzerland, South Africa, Tehran, Canada, and a bunch of our HR folks who are hailing from across the Americas. So welcome. We're really glad to have you with us. We are here in sunny New York, where the weather was quite warm yesterday, and today we have weather that is very chilly and frosty. So we don't know if this is global warming or climate change, but I do think Mother Nature needs Prozac, any way you look at it. So that is not the topic of our conversation today. We are going to be talking about reskilling and upskilling for the future. And for those of you who have been on this conference today, there have been a lot of discussions already on the other panels that are relative to what we will be talking about. We heard about the need for humans to make friends with robots because they're here and we have to work with them. That's that human and machine collaboration. We heard a lot about the skills gap that exists today and will continue to grow. And we've heard a lot about the challenge in finding talent in this really tight labor market and the skills that they need to be successful, where the employers are looking for certain skill sets and our colleges and universities and higher ed maybe not meeting that goal. So today I'd like to introduce our panelists. We have Tami Rosen, who is a Chief People Officer at Luminar Technologies. We have Jeffrey Lanuez with us from Pima College in sunny Arizona. And we have Dr. Anna Tavis here with us, who is the Academic Director at NYU, New York University here in New York City. I'm Maryanne Spatola. I will be your moderator for this panel. I am the CEO and founder of a small talent consultancy firm, C3 Talent Strategies, and we are focused on the intersection of talent and strategy and helping organizations build the HR functions they need to be successful in the future. So to get us started, I'm going to ask our panelists to tell us a little bit more about themselves and to answer this question. Why is this important topic? Why is this topic important now? So Tami, would you kick us off?
Certainly. So by way of background, I think most people have the bios, but I've spent a lion's share of my career in an HR leadership role spanning both finance, technology, consumer internet, and now autonomous vehicles. And I'm very excited about this topic because it really, when you think about academia, it is one of the last frontiers of institutions that need to start reimagining and reinventing themselves for the future. And as we think about what employers need and industry needs, we need a partnership with academia in order to make sure we have our workforce ready for the future. So it's near and dear to my heart as I look to get the best talent in any of the different companies I've worked for and ensure that they can be ready to do the work we need for the future.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you, Tami. Dr. Tavis, Anna, would you go next?
I teach at New York University now, having spent about 15 years in the senior talent roles in organizations. So I'm very familiar with what the needs of the business are. And I am doing the work that Tami just talked about, disrupting academia itself to deliver the right kinds of pathways for people to transition and learn the skills and get accreditation and qualifications needed for the future work. In the last 2 years that I've been the department chair for human capital management here at New York University, we created 2 brand new accelerated master's degree in human capital analytics and technology. That is a STEM designated program, and executive coaching and organization and consulting, because we believe that this set of skills is going to be really driving the HR profession in the future.
Excellent. And Jeffrey, last but not least?
Hi, yes, talking from sunny Tucson, Arizona. We are a community college. We serve about 25,000 students a year, only a third of which are full-time students, and we do that with 1,200 employees. These students are a mix of traditional students, dual enrollment students that are in high school, adult learners, and also I want to talk a little bit about our community partners. One of which actually is a self-driving truck company, Too Simple, that you may know of, Tami, one of our partners here in Tucson. where we're their learning partner in helping to upskill their workforce. Today's topic is vital for me right now as a leader with teams just like anybody on this call, not necessarily because I am the HR leader at a community college. What I mentioned as our mission as a community college is well and good, but that's the business we're in, just like you guys are in other businesses. I believe we have the responsibility of running the business, and my focus is on the needs of the people, upskilling and even reskilling our own workforce to meet the needs of the organization, to serve students, and focusing all of our work, especially for me, the work that we're doing right here in HR and employee development, to our mission, which is student success here. So I believe if your mission is a product or a service, how do you focus your efforts to provide the greatest impact? And for me, we need to focus on people.
Excellent. Well, thank you for those introductions. I think what was really glaringly obvious as I listened to the other panel discussions this morning is that preparing our organizations and our institutions to be successful in this future of work has become a global business imperative. And it starts really with us in HR. And so what you'll find today with our panel as you listen to their introductions is we have kind of that three-legged stool of people who are in HR, transforming their own organizations, who are responsible for what's happening to teach about how to do that in HR in our institutions. We have our own workforce to handle, and then we have the business side of it from the employer perspective, which we all are, about how do we make sure we're getting what we need in terms of the skill sets required to make our businesses successful. We know at the end of the day, if we create winning organizations that are focused on that human-centered, that people-centric organization required of the future, that's where we'll have the most success, right? At the end of the day, when this automation really takes hold over the next decade, you know, if you read the World Economic Forum report about 30 to 60% of jobs are predicted to be automated, what's left is these organizations are more human than we've ever been before. And figuring out how to make that work will be an imperative for us. So I have a couple of prepared questions for my panelists, and we're going to toss them out, and we invite you to respond. And if you're online listening to our panel discussion, please submit your questions. I'll be checking the chat and LinkedIn on Live as we go through. We'd love to hear from you and get your thoughts included in the conversation. So we'll have much more of a dialogue than, you know, a Q&A, okay? So first question up is how or what can higher education do to help us close the growing skill gap that we see in the economy today? And I'm going to toss this one to Jeffrey first to see, you know, what's happening in Pima University, in your college environment. What are you doing to help close those skill gaps?
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about an example. So maybe easier at a community college because that's part of the mission in the community for what we do. I'd like to give an example, and that's of our local partner with Corporation Caterpillar, where they have new college grads coming out as engineers with bachelor's degrees. And what they saw were these folks that were just leaving with their degree weren't able to really build in the real world. So they had issues where they were engineering products, but then when it came time to build or repair, they couldn't. The actual person couldn't get in there to get in there to do it the way it was engineered. So they're sending these employees to us to learn, in this particular case, hands-on welding skills, so that when they're designing in-house, they know firsthand what will work in their building of the designs and have empathy for what that would be like. Another example is I also worked prior at the University of Arizona, Arizona as it's called now. And it had a similar program of I would say upskilling, where our graduates there were graduating with a 4-year degree, excellent university. But as they were nearing graduation and entering the job market, we saw that they were missing also some type of hands-on skills. So there is a very big department in focus on identifying a skills gap for real-world application, and that would be, maybe an internship, or there was plenty of programs where even after or getting close to earning their bachelor's, they were still needing some type of like certificate that would provide some immediate usable skills and easily identifiable and marketable, like on a resume. In general, at our community college, what we see is a huge value add to the student and then to the employer are things like soft skills, really. That's what we're doing a lot of talking about: critical thinking, problem solving, analyzing data, and actually knowing how to use it and turn it into something actionable. So these types of things we're building into, these types of like skills we're building into curriculum.
Yeah, very nice. And we're seeing some responses from our audience about this need to have real world application. And so that reminds me, Tami, thank you, Jeffrey. Yesterday when we were chatting, you mentioned some partnership work you're doing with USC. Can you talk a little bit about that?
It's not actually a partnership work. It's just a very unique, I guess, program that's offered at the Ivy Young Academy at USC. It's called a degree in disruption. And the idea is to kind of combine a multidisciplinary approach to learning, looking at business, the arts, and technology. And the great thing about what they're doing in disrupting is really thinking about what does the future employer need. And they don't need someone to come out with, you know, a CS only major. They need them to come out with understanding of technology, critical thinking, similar to what Jeff's problem solving, big picture thinking, design thinking, and how do they look at the big problem and solve it with a multitude of different skills. And to kind of tack on to what Jeff said, I really think the skills gap is going to be closed more with thinking about those softer skills and how we teach resiliency, being nimble, being critical thinkers with problem solving capabilities, and not having only one toolkit. And people will have to evolve their skills and not just be stuck in, I could only do X.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Yeah, and they're referring to that as the hybrid of skills. Some articles I've read call it STEMpathic. So you're taking those analytics and that engineering, and then you're adding the empathy pieces to it. And of course, we started to see the rise of STEAM, where they put the A in STEM to account for the arts and these other cognitive, creative skill sets that we're going to need to have in the future. But if we go back to the analytics piece, Anna, doing a lot of work at NYU with the new HCAT master's degree on the analytics component. Would you talk to us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I can't agree more that it's not really about just teaching one trick to our next generation leaders. In that sense, I do not think that education is going to go away. There's been sort of a dystopian view of education as not needed anymore. Just let's put people in the jobs and train them coding, and that will suffice. And we all know that no one now can teach the skills of the future, much as we can speculate about what that's going to be. And therefore, I think the role, just to get back to and make a connection to the previous conversation, the role of high ed is exactly, Tami, what you described and Jeffrey mentioned, is the blending, disrupting boundaries, doing cross-disciplinary experimentations and applications of skills, and then learning from the issues. But the most important thing is to really learn how to learn. And where analytics comes in, to me, it's the best way to actually get feedback from reality. If I can just summarize at what that a role of analytics has become, it's really about evidence-based practice. If before we didn't really often know and just were guessing the outcomes of what we do, now with the technology available to us, AI and other tools available to us, what it's doing fundamentally to bring the human back into this dimension, it's giving us immediate feedback that we can react to, we can solve problems right away, etc. And what's really encouraging about analytics vis-a-vis just pure data is that it gives us a level of interpretation already, with AI being able to customize the feedback to you, et cetera. And so what we're seeing is, in addition to just basic skills of coding, engineering, et cetera, and mining that data, what's becoming more important on the analytics side is really the predictive skills, the prescriptive decision making, and that's all a very, very strategic skill set. So what education does is, at least what we do in our program, we really build up, scaffold the skill set from really basic, let's go learn that Python and understand how we can mine data, all the way to how can we help business solve their problems? What do we understand from the prior experience that data is telling us? And what kind of stories can we tell about the information that we're seeing in front of us? And those are the skills that can only be developed in this multidisciplinary context, where we challenge our students not with the paradoxes of reality, with multiple options available to us, but at the same time give them the basic skills to literally take it all the way from getting the data to solving the most complex world issues like climate change, health, different health challenges that we feel we have in the health industry, et cetera. So that spectrum of skills is what higher ed needs to be training people in.
That is awesome. Thank you for that. And we have a question from Michael Gonzalez on a similar topic. And it's a really, really interesting question. And I know, Anna, you're involved with SHRM a great deal. Jeffrey, you may be as well at the community college level. But the question is, what's happening with the relationship between SHRM and the private industry, with the colleges, the universities, the K through 12? Is SHRM have any kind of relationship to help us with this reskilling effort and initiatives?
You know, if Jeffrey, I'm sure you have your own response. We certainly are very closely connected to SHRM. I think SHRM is servicing a huge number of professionals. Therefore, you know, the range of what they're looking after is fairly significant. But where I see SHRM's role, and that hasn't been really mentioned before, is more of an advocacy with the government and influence on the policy. That's where I think they can play the largest role, because, you know, the industry and university connections are really important, and we can totally take care of it. But when it comes down to influencing decisions about laws and policies and guidance even coming in, that is more applicable and scalable across, that's where I think SHRM can play a significant role as an advocate for the profession, where we can feed them what we see is a requirement now and where the old regulations do not fit, and then them advocating for how policy needs to be also adaptive and meet the expectations of the business and academia.
Terrific.
Here we see, I'm involved with SHRM a little bit here locally. I'm much more involved nationally with CUPA HR, the College and University Professional Association of HR, that's very higher ed focused. But your question was specifically SHRM, which is very timely, because here the local SHRM chapter is, I think, more than active. I agree with their role of what Anna just said. That would have been my answer up until a couple days ago, where I saw the speaker for the upcoming panel for the local SHRM is actually the chancellor that I work for at Pima Community College, and our vice president of workforce and our interim transition officer here, and they're going to be talking about our same subject, the future at work. So our vice president of workforce is really our local expert on this topic, and SHRM invited them to come speak. So I think it's pretty interesting that these variety of industries invited them to talk, which the attendees there are all the local HR practitioners also. So that's the group that it mostly attracts.
Yeah, interesting. And I know here in New York, I've seen some invitations on the SHRM level to come have what they're calling convos. And they're trying to pull together the HR practitioners and the business community to have these types of conversations. So I think SHRM is working on other initiatives to get closer to the education space, whether it be K through 12 or community college or higher ed degrees, whatever that may be. And also looking to help build that bridge between HR and industry and higher ed and industry. So
and if I could just, if I could just quickly add, I think we're absolutely, it's the largest professional association for HR. And so therefore, Jeffrey, totally agree. The influence of the local chapters is very important. I was mostly focusing on the national level because that's something so unique to what they could do. But local chapters have a lot of autonomy, and totally agree. They are jumping in and really helping out to bring communities together.
Right.
Yeah, it's good to see. I think this forum is also just something really different that attracted me for seeing it on LinkedIn. And Enrique and I are talking about doing something different with like hacking HR here in Tucson. I think it's,
awesome.
you know, like we're doing now, just something that's really vital and very different.
Terrific. So that brings us to the second question, which is related to this topic. And Tami, I'm going to toss to you because we had a little bit of this conversation yesterday, but you know, you talked about having some challenges with finding talent for your organization specifically, right? You've got a nice niche. You're clearly in that innovative space with autonomous vehicles and what's happening in that market, and finding talent is tough. So can you talk to us a little bit about what you think higher ed can do to partner with employees to help align what the institutions are creating in terms of student outcomes and what employers are really needing now and in the near term future?
Yeah, for sure. I think, you know, the challenge is that if the role that somebody is going to go play at a company is pretty obvious, like whether it's an accountant or a lawyer or something that's more of a profession that's clear cut, it's easy for them to be trained and to kind of retrofit into a company. The challenge is when the roles that they're creating, that they need to play, are multifaceted and have very different skills that they need, not just sort of industry experience, but then also technical experience, and then onto what Jeff and Anna are reaching out to about these soft skills that are necessary to be nimble and flexible and innovative. So I think what universities need to be thinking about is really trying to blur the lines of what the history looked like in graduating a student, and not just say, because you're in HR, you're going to take these 5 courses, and because you're in, you know, in the computer science class, you're going to get the 101, the 201, the 301, but say, well, what is the sort of amalgamation of all the stuff that you're doing, and how does that help employers see you as a whole person, not just a skill?
That's right.
And really connect us more on the fact that people bring more than just one skill to an equation, and how do we give them more opportunity set, not only for what they're coming into today, but what they would need to do tomorrow. And a lot of times what I look at for companies, and not just the one I'm at today, but those in the past, is what I kind of consider these sleeper skills. So these skills that people have in their toolkit from what they've learned either from school or other companies, and that we don't need them right now, but we will. Whether it might be a language skill, it might be, you know, a negotiation skill, it might be some other skill. And how do we make sure we categorize all of that and understand it, so that when our business moves, changes, evolves, we can leverage the talent we have under our own roof to actually come and evolve with us.
Yeah, interesting. One of the panel discussions this morning was talking about exactly that, is when do we get to a place where we're not really focusing on a job per se, but we're really zeroed in on the specific skills individuals need to have, and then collectively as teams and groups, and driving organizational capabilities to really win in the marketplace. Great.
Yeah, I think I envision a world with like a workplace almost having sort of a marketplace of skills needed, and then mapping people's skills, not roles. So you won't see someone doing this role, they'll be having certain competencies that can be leveraged across different places.
Right. And we're already seeing some of that, right, in the gig economy, right? If we were to go out to Upwork today or Elance, it's all project-based work, and what you're posting for the work you want are the skills that are required and the outcomes that you're looking for, not necessarily here's a job or a role. Great. So similar to what Tami was talking about, I know, Anna, at NYU, you've done some really great work with the business community, running case studies where students actually solve business problems for some of our organizations here. Would you talk a little bit about that work?
Yeah, that's great. Totally agree, Tami. I think one of the big disruptions in HR is that we are getting rid of jobs as the unit of measure for how work is being done, and much more fluid, much more interdisciplinary projects come into play. And then obviously in that context, you know, how do we train people to be, you know, tapping into their adjacent skills, let's say skills that they were not hired for, let's say, but they have the talent for, and in the new economy, this is what's being called for. So definitely these types of problem-focused case competitions that we create for our students, bringing multidisciplinary teams together. Like we had, for example, and it's always done in partnership with companies. So to give you an example, last spring, we had a case competition on digital transformation of the workplace, partnering with Adobe as the technology provider and their client Pfizer that faced the challenge of digitizing their workplace. And so we had our students from, you know, the HR programs, which are mine, but also marketing, management and systems, project management, and we had those interdisciplinary teams working together, then presenting to both Adobe and Pfizer executives their solutions. And that was a very engaging. There was an element of gamification that people are competing with each other. At the same time, you know, there are other types of incentives for everyone participating, and that's what we are trying to emphasize. So I do believe that it's not about jobs, it's about projects that call upon all different types of skills. It's about interdisciplinary teams coming together, again, not just individual in a job or a role, it's about collaborating with colleagues. And then it's getting, again, I'm very big on feedback and getting back to the business right there, where the executives would get up and say, you know, here's what will work for us and what doesn't. And that type of breaking boundaries, I think, is the way to go to really get prepared for this new world of work.
Excellent.
Just to jump in, I would just say on the Anna piece, I think it's interesting you say that, because if you think about what the workforce wants, is they want to be motivated to do their best work. And if they can do it with multiple different skills in a different journey than what has been taken in the past, that'll keep them more loyal, more focused, and actually delivering the best work in that project, and then we're building on that for their next project. And I think motivation is sort of the key that we should be, the thread we should be pulling in HR, and thinking about that as the driver and connecting that to people's interests, skills, and competence.
Totally, and just one more point on that, and also the rewards. In terms of rewards, it's not just professor grading your paper, it's a real executives looking at you actually as a potential employee, with some talent acquisition folks sitting in the auditorium. The incentives are huge, and people feel extremely elated. It's like a performance art for them to be using all sorts of skills, including presentation, storytelling, problem solving, all of it packaged together.
Yeah, it's a great point. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I think, Maryanne, for us as a community college, we're focused on making sure we're offering relevant programming and skill building that meets the need of our community, our industries around us, and what we believe to be the workers of today and especially tomorrow. I know it can't really be guessed or figured out, but we know that, I think one of you just mentioned, there's so many people, types of jobs that'll be displaced, and I've heard figures up to half the amount of jobs that the very young people that are in school now will have. They don't really exist, but what I think we could do, and I don't know that it's an exact science, maybe Anna can speak to this a little bit, is I think we need to monitor and adapt to signals that we've seen over, let's say, 100 years and the other industrial revolutions. Like what are the consistent signals? This is not my expertise, but I've heard enough talks on this where it makes a lot of sense to watch all these factors: technology, government, economics, other companies, disruptors, all these signals that we've seen other companies that haven't caught these signals in other organizations, and they didn't survive the next round of changes. And I know that it's vital to doing our jobs right as a community college and serving our students as educational institutions. That's our focus. We can't afford to fail our students here and have them be training for, a singular job like Tami is talking about, or something that's not relevant, and then the real what's needed by business, like Anna's talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And so another point I would just add, when Anna was talking about our case competitions here, I have two of my students, I'm an adjunct here as well, and I had two returning alumni from NYU who came back to talk to my current students. My course this semester is on the future of HR. And both of them participated in the case competition. They didn't win, but they both got jobs in the organizations that were sponsoring the case competitions, right? So you don't even have to be the winner of the case competition, but you're getting that visibility, you're getting that exposure, you're learning how to solve business problems and how to articulate the value you can bring to an organization. So it's a win-win all the way around.
Can I just mention very quickly, Maryanne, when you say win-win, this industry partnership is definitely changing for us too. So, like Tami's company, there's a autonomous truck company here, and we have had for quite some time a truck driving certificate program. Well, these things aren't going to continue to meld in the future, and because they're here teaching us and we're helping upskill the drivers of the next generation, it's really changing what we do in our programs too. The truck driver we see is not going to be the same truck driver coming along soon, and and as the community partner and serving our community where people want to do these professions, we need to understand it and also be teaching that these industries are changing and the jobs changing, and here's the relevant skills that we believe are coming down next for you as the, maybe it's still called truck driver, but it's going to be very different.
Something different, exactly. Right. So while we're on this topic, I'm sorry, go ahead, Tami.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I'd be a little provocative because I keep hearing the word skills and teaching skills. And I think if we want to be really provocative in what the future holds, it's experiences and expertise. And if we teach that and we teach people to continue to what Anna said, be learners and curious and wanting to get more experiences that amass to these expertise, I think we'll be better served than teaching just skills.
Oh, absolutely. And keep being provocative, because the audience has fallen in love with your new tagline of sleeper skills. So keep at it, Tami.
I like it. Love it.
Yeah, I love it too. So
That's
on
fabulous.
this topic of models that need to change, a conversation we had in class 2 weeks ago was around the evolving life cycle of a career, right? And you should see the students' face when I just love to inform them they're going to work for another 40, 50, maybe 60 years of their life, right? And the likelihood that they're going to stay in the same job, in the same company, or even honestly in the same profession over that span of time is absurd. And so when we think about that and these lifelong careers, and like Tami and others, we were just talking about lifelong learning, what needs to shift in our education model, right? Because this traditional model of go to school until you're roughly 25, work for 25 or 30, get your gold watch and go home is completely broken. That doesn't work anymore. So what is the new model? What does that look like?
Well, can I jump in for a second? Because I think what
Please.
you'll see, especially me being out in Silicon Valley, is that people are choosing not to go to college.
That's another
and they're
trend.
choosing to go directly into industry and into startup and into creating. And so the cost of college is definitely one of the inhibitors. And if you look at other countries where it's a lot more affordable, it may be very different. But here, there's choices and there's opportunity costs. And I think what we need to be thinking about is what do we need people to be truly amassing and learning and evolving so that they can actually hit the ground running and be successful. And I think the university system is fabulous, but they have to start thinking about how do they facilitate learning versus teach. And that's a very different concept. And I think, Anna, you're doing a lot of this, and I'm hearing Jeff as well, really rethinking what it means to be a student, a professor, all the different things, and then what is going to come out of that. And it can't no longer be, here's information, take a test, tell me what you've seen. It has to be teamwork. It has to be collaboration. It has to be, here's a problem, let's solve it with all of your tools and knowledge. And that's companies' work. They have a problem, and they need everyone to come to bear.
Yeah, Tami, if you're just really feeding into what I am doing here. We should have met before this panel. A couple of things that I'm working on and what I am. Yeah, totally, anytime. I'm right on Times Square here. So what I am really negotiating with the university and we are totally open. I think I got the green light on that, is to accept people into the professional degrees without bachelor's degrees. And that's kind of an absolute no. I mean, at first, my dean couldn't believe it. But when I started actually lobbying and saying, we have these professional degrees that give people, like executive coaching or consulting, for example, that give people a pathway to the third chapter, the fourth chapter. They already accomplished a lot. They started companies, et cetera, et cetera. And then they want to go really deep, and they really want to be translators of their experience in the consulting capacity or, coaching people, et cetera. And that's a totally different skill set. Again, this is very high touch skill sets, and they want to dive into psychology. They want to really amass that knowledge that is absolutely necessary to take, again, them to the next level. So to your point, breaking those boundaries, letting people in if they don't have those traditional qualifications into the master's degrees, accelerating the process, and then totally agree that how we teach, what the purpose, again, reviewing the purpose of the education. And the purpose shouldn't be just training to the skills. Companies are doing it. We've done a lot of work with IBM. They have their own badging system. They're just taking people straight from high school, putting them in high-paying jobs, and they're coding, et cetera. And then they come to us for a very different reason. And that's why the purpose of higher ed is changing. The purpose of a master's degree, and that's all we teach, is changing. And we're fully aware of it. And how do we live up to that? Obviously, this is where we need the lobbying with, accreditation agencies, with all of the institutions that we've built around these types of barriers.
Well, I think, Anna, in one of our conversations, I found it interesting that we were talking about maybe who would be on this call, and you talked about how other industry executives might be coming to HR, like you said, psychology, organizational development. I thought that was an interesting focus.
Yeah, we're starting to see a lot of that. And as you think about how HR is itself transforming as a profession, we're seeing the lines of other functions starting to bleed in and out. Marketing is coming in with employee experience from customer experience, design thinking is bleeding into HR. It all started with our agile processes around performance management, which is an old software development tool, agile processing. So we're starting to see this influx and melting pot, if you will, in the HR profession of people coming in. And it's exciting, honestly, to see that other people have an interest in wanting to join a profession that can have such a profound impact
I think people are getting that now.
Success. Yeah,
I think people are seeing that. I think we have shown the value of HR and the strategic seat at the table too, where maybe in past decades it was, I won't date myself, but it was a personnel office. It was very, very different than it is now. So I think that attracts people that are different thinkers and leaders also to the profession, because they see it for what it really is, and the high value and focus on people and development, and that's what runs a business and changes lives.
Absolutely, yeah. And full disclosure, I'm a recovering computer programmer. Who would have ever thought, right? But I will, but very honestly, go back to this, skills, experience, expertise. Little did I know those would be unbelievably important and transferable skills.
Exactly.
When I got into HR, because it's data-driven, it's process-oriented, it's having a systems perspective on organizational processes that drive impact and results. So, if you had asked me when I was a computer programmer if I'd ever end up being a CHRO, I would have told you were nuts. But that's where I landed, and it ended up being, and I think it's a good example of what we will see more and more of at an accelerated pace as the world of work continues to evolve.
Someone once shared with me that in companies, the one area that doesn't get the most internal mobility into the area is HR. People transition from all different parts of the organization, but you don't see a lot of influx into the human resource function. And I think that is a huge mistake, because human resources is something that needs business-minded people, computer programmers, everyone to kind of think about the problem at hand and use all the tools from metrics to analytics and reporting and analysis and trends and all that to try to be much more thoughtful about what do the people need and how do they need it to be the most motivated to do the best work. So I do think HR needs to have more business-minded people first who understand the discipline of HR.
Yeah, and I would agree, and also say it goes the other way around. I talk to my students all the time who are coming out into the workplace with an HR degree and basis, and my suggestion to them is take a rotation into a business role. Learn what it's like to be on the other side of the table, and then you'll see what really effective HR looks like and what it needs to be. Yeah. Right? Exactly.
Good suggestion,
Maryanne.
But at the same time, same time, I just want to chime in, and I think that, to your point, that it goes the other way around as well. If you're a CFO and you don't know how to manage people, that's lethal. We've seen enough, and I worked on Wall Street. We've seen enough bad managers in our experience of working for different companies, and which means that the skill set needs to go both ways, and the rotations of business people into HR is not just benefiting HR, but it's benefiting business as well, because the better managed the organizations are from the people perspective, the more engagement you get, the better performance you get at the end of the day, and that's what business is all about.
Absolutely, and I remember very clearly.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say there just needs to be a discussion at a very high level that the product or service strategy and the people strategy need to coexist, and that they need to be intertwined in a way where, there will be trade-offs and there will be tensions, but it's not always going to be product and service over people. People are the product and service, and you need to integrate them in the right way to continue to have the most successful business long-term. And it's really about long-term business sustainability, leveraging your people to drive that.
Yeah, I've spent my whole career trying to build that bridge at that apex, because it is a mutual understanding of the value every function brings to the table. And how do we work together to drive organizational results and achievement? Because we know if your organization is winning in the market and your organization is successful, everybody's happy. Shareholders are happy, stakeholders are happy, employees are happy. We want to create these winning marketplaces, right? So it's actually a great question, because one of our folks in the audience, Stephen, submitted a question about how do we transform the HR skill sets, right, to help us get to this place? Let's go back to our own profession, whether you're an HR professional working in a higher ed institution, or you're an HR professional working in an organization, all of these reskilling conversations rest on us too. And so what suggestions do you have about how we can help fellow practitioners get to that place?
If I could jump in really quickly,
Please.
just to be very specific and concrete, and this is the reason why we developed the analytics and technology program. I think the skills of looking at data, getting the right data, cleaning up the data that HR currently messed up. You know, we don't have clean data. That's a number one priority, but really understanding how to get feedback for ourselves. You know, I again, back to my favorite topic, you know, because data is telling us stories. Data is telling us what's going right and wrong. Data drives business. And it's just coming into HR. I mean, that was one of the biggest misses for HR. We didn't work with right data. So we were basing a lot of the decisions, a lot of the processes exclusively on intuition and experience and biases at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And so if we can learn to work with evidence, it's going to clear up a lot of the a lot of the confusion about what the function is all about. So for me, fundamentally, there are many, many levels of that, but fundamentally, we need to become evidence-driven, data-driven, understand analytics, and be able to tell the right story to the organization about, you know, that most precious asset that they have, but we have to really show what it is. So that's my point.
There you go.
I agree with that. Oh,
yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I agree with that. I think it's also HR showing value, getting something done that really makes measurable people and business results. So they see us as that player, and the education goes both ways. I think in all industries, but I see it right now where my team really needs to understand what it is that we do as an educational institution and what is our business and our mission. Not only to understand that, but actually see and feel how it gets done. It's a little bit more intangible. I worked for a very large mining company doing this work at one point, and it was, when you can see it and touch the product, it's a little bit easier to understand the business. But when the business is people or education, you really need to get out and spend time with the folks. And all those folks also think they're people experts because they all have people. So the education process goes both ways, and it's delivering service to them and understanding their business.
Awesome.
Let me just jump in a little bit, because I always think about, as I build HR teams in different companies, there's sort of the trifecta that I always tell people I look for. And I've been doing this for a long time. And even when it wasn't sort of like what you should be, I did, because I think that HR leaders need to have a sort of strong creative problem solving gene. They also need to have very strong quantitative skills, at the same time, relationship management skills and client orientation. And if those three things are there, the last sort of wrapper around it, I would say, is that you have to love the business of which you support, whatever the mission of your company is doing. Because in order to actually help people grow, evolve, and motivate to do their best work, you have to understand it so fundamentally that you can put to bear the creative problem solving, the quantitative analysis, and then the business relationship to get it done.
Nice. Very, very nice. Well, thank you for all of that. We're coming into the end of our session, and I want to thank all of our panelists for their great insights today. We had a really terrific response in the chat feature today to everything that you've been sharing with them, so thank you for doing that. The last question I'd like us to leave with is, you know, we're all about, in the Hacking HR group, running these types of opportunities where we bring top thought leaders together. We're talking about relative and important topics to the community, but we're also about action. And taking away an insight is great, but making it an actionable insight is even better. And so what I want to let our panelists close out today with is, what is one key takeaway that you'd like the audience to have today that they can actually do something with?
I could jump in. I would say, stop hiring on skills. and stop saying someone needs some prerequisite or some expertise in order for them to be able to be proven on the job, and start looking at the experiences they have, how they think, how they problem solve, and how they evolve. And then see if you can match that to the interests they have, because I think you'll have a much better long-term worker at the company than if you're just matching to they have this specific skill or they've done this before. And then I would say on the education side, I would say push for disruption, push for the lines to be broken down between different schools within a university, that there should be multidisciplinary ways to do things, and that just because you're HR, you should be able to take computer science courses, or you should be able to take business classes, and that you should be able to create the major around what you think your future can be when you go out into the workplace.
Awesome. Thank you, Tami.
I would say focus. I'm very big at doing a few things right. I see in organizations, especially in today's trends with social media and all the marketing and all the fabulous products that are offered, some of which I'm sure there's representatives on our call, I see a lack of focus in some industry where things come along that are the greatest things or shiny and exciting, and we're losing sight of actually getting the work done. And it's not really about the technology. There's plenty of technology that'll help us, but it's about the people and the business and getting those things right. With people, I think it's more personal too. I know we talked about knowing the business. So I think that's important. In my industry, I like to see the different, I'll call them business units for today's call, really understand their own business and have a business plan before they make change with people or hire people, especially that Tami talked about, and hiring the right people for the right reasons. I think what you just said is vital. And then we also mentioned this before is being more of a generalist and having all these soft skills and business acumen and being able to actually produce something with it is very, very vital, and not having a very singular role, especially if it's something that's going to be automated, let's say, and become obsolete. And then lastly, I think, even though I'm saying focus and do a few things right, where Anna talked about data and using the data to make these decisions is just an absolute game changer in our role in any industry. And I see it as taking my entire department and this college to an absolute next level with what we're doing with actually using data to make some really informed decisions and really showcase things.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think all of our comments are sort of additive. Without repeating what my esteemed colleagues just said, I would say, well, take one action and think and do sort of an audit of the different communities you belong to and diversify your networks. So make sure, even, if you're not put in the finance department or marketing department tomorrow, make sure that you belong to a variety of different communities. And some places you will lead, some places you follow. Play around with the, with the ecosystem that you have around you, whether you're in Tucson, in Orlando, or California, or New York. What I think is very important for HR professionals is to constantly challenge ourselves by showing how to break those boundaries, how to step into unfamiliar environments, even in a simple way of just going to, a product meeting that you just invited yourself to, et cetera. So I think these are just kind of tactical ways of challenging, and then kind of doing a reflection on that and saying, what makes me shy from those types of challenges? What makes you sit in your office and look at your email all day? So I think that practical things, I believe that the future is really with communities, with teams, with collaborative environments, and networks like this one that really brings people from around the world to the conversation that we're having now. And that's the future of HR.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And I would just follow that tag from Anna. My call to action for everybody who's on this call is, if this is your first time in the Hacking HR community, welcome. We hope you had a great day with us and enjoyed this panel, but I would encourage you to get more involved. This is an expansive global community of forward-thinking people, not just HR professionals, people who have a vested interest and desire to help our organizations be better, to help businesses be successful, to have some part of that. And whether you just join in on a LinkedIn Live session or you get involved with a local chapter like Jeffrey talked about, I run the one here in New Jersey, I participate in the one in New York, but you will meet other people, like-minded people who want to do the same thing. And we can help each other in achieving the advancement in our profession that we all desire. So with that, I will say thank you very much to our esteemed panelists. You guys were really terrific. We had a great response from our audience in the chat. Thank you for sharing your insights and your time, and hope to see you again soon.